Work hard, do what you say you're going to do, build credibility, stick with it, persevere, and you'll get where you're planning on getting to. It really is that simple. And you're going to have lots of bumps in the road. I've had plenty, but you just endure it, deal with it, take your lumps, and keep going. And you'll end up where you want to end up.
From Wealth Creators USA, this is From Worry to Wealth, the podcast that shatters the myths and mystique surrounding wealth creation. As students, our schools and universities often neglect the crucial education on the core financial principles. I'm Ben Lyons. I'm a business owner, investor, entrepreneur, and author, and I'm joined by my business partner, Alex Fink. And together, we're here to inspire your journey towards improving your financial self. In a world buzzing with advice on the behaviors and mindset to become wealthy, we'll share proven processes tried and tested by our network of successful collaborators. So get ready to move past worry and move towards wealth and your improved financial self. Hey, welcome back, everybody, to another episode of From Worry to Wealth. I'm here with my esteemed colleague, business partner, Alex Fink, and I am Ben Lyons, and I am really excited in this episode to be talking with a dear friend that I've known a very long time, who's also a big investor in our fund and business partner and really successful guy. Great story. I know the story, but I'm really excited that you are with us to hear his story. And with that, I'm going to introduce the esteemed Jay Dackman. I guess we call you Jay Dackman Esquire.
I would have called him the lovely and talented.
Oh, the lovely and talented
Jay Dackman. I don't know what he prefers, but esteemed is nice.
Jay will do for
Jay will do.
Right.
So by the time I finish, I'll probably sound more esteemed. But let's start with Jay.
Nice.
So Jay Dackman, the initials are JD, and you are a JD, right?
Yes, I am.
Yes, but you don't practice law anymore, right?
They do not. Nope.
Yeah, that's probably
Only
good.
when debating issues internally with his family.
So no lawyer jokes.
Yeah, no lawyer. Okay.
Because he's not practicing anymore, so they
That's
wouldn't
right.
apply.
Yeah.
You can make the jokes. I'll just join in. I like making fun of them too.
Perfect.
Right. So Jay, you and I go back for our viewers and listeners. You and I go back. I think 18 or 19 when I met you, and geez, I'm 58. So that tells it's almost 40 years, right?
40 years. Yes.
Wow. Isn't that crazy?
And you guys met at, you were on one of those, no, they didn't have dating websites back then.
No dating websites.
Okay.
There was no internet back then. There was no computers were barely invented at that time.
So there was, you were on a horse then, back then? It was traveling at a...
No, they had cars invented. There were cars, but no cell phones.
Yeah.
Okay, well, if we continue this, we'll be on a podcast, more of a comedy show than anything. So for our viewers and listeners, as we intro this, this podcast is really in support of the book From Worry to Wealth, and it's where we unravel and discuss the wealth creation formula.
Correct.
And, you know, what's exciting about Jay and his story and what we're going to discuss is how Jay applied the wealth creation formula and the variables within it, and we'll cover that before we finish. But so without further ado, I think, Jay, what we'd like to do is have you take us back and tell our viewers, take as much time as you need to give everybody your background and kind of the evolution from education all the way into vocation. And we are really going to be focused, Alex and I are probably going to interrupt you along the way to really emphasize your income strategies, your asset acquisition strategies, how you utilize leverage, and how you utilize time. We're always going to be focused on this wealth creation formula, especially in relation to your success. So with that, why don't you start with your background, and we'll go from there.
All right, well, let's go way back, Ben. You said that you and I, roughly 40 years. Let's go back 50 or even 60. I'm now 66. So I was just thinking about my entrepreneurial pursuits as a young boy. And I remember I used to shovel driveways from snow. I used to cut lawns for $5 a lawn, an acre for $5, which included trimming,
Wow.
Hedges, edging, and cleaning up all the grass for $5.
Wow.
Okay.
Jay has a lot of extra time now. I think we could use his services here in Florida.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes. We can
Then
add him to the
to
landscape crew.
Exactly.
forward a few years, when I learned how to drive, I decided I wanted to go into the car detailing business. So I opened up a company. It wasn't official, but I had business cards made up of Colossal Auto Refinishing.
Oh,
C for Colossal, A for Auto, and R for Refinishing. CAR.
Oh,
nice.
whoa.
All right. I charged $25 a car. I used to get my mother's friends who all drove Cadillacs and uh, not Ferraris, fancy cars. For $25 a piece, I would bring them back to my house. It would take me about 4 hours. I'd do one in the morning, one in the afternoon, make myself $50. And I was very happy.
Wow.
Getting a nice tan, listening to good music, and driving nice cars. So that was fun.
Yeah. I
All
like
right.
it.
And then I evolved a little further and went into the snowball business. I had 2 trucks at one time while I was in law school. I also had a couple of stands. That was also a very interesting and profitable business when you're just selling, flavored ice in a cup for 75 cents or $1.
So basically,
And
food truck business, right? I mean, it's essentially a food truck. Yeah.
it was terrific. It was
Yeah.
terrific.
Wow.
But that lasted through law school, and after that, my father told me, get rid of that and start acting like a grown-up. So I was 24 at that point, and then I had to start acting like a lawyer or acting like a businessman or something to that effect.
Jay, let's pause there for a second because we talk about in the book From Worry to Wealth, the influencers. So we like to talk about who your influencers were, right?
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the other thing would be the educational piece, right? Because he fast forwarded through law school. But yeah, go ahead, Jay.
Okay. Well, so education-wise, I did my undergraduate work at University of Maryland, got a degree in finance, and then I went off to law school, also at University of Maryland, and got my Juris Doctor in 1982. So that was the end of the snowball business and the beginning of my, quote, professional career.
How did you choose? Did you have any mentors that guided you to that level of education? How did you make that decision at that age?
My father was an attorney also, specialized in banking. So he was my role model of sorts from a business and banking standpoint. But while I was in law school, I was fairly certain I didn't really want to practice. I was just much more interested in business. So when I got out of school, I practiced just for a little while because that was what I was sort of trained to do. But the more I did it, the less I liked it. And then I just started getting basically into the real estate business.
Yeah. So your dad was a lawyer, but in banking, and you got a degree in finance and your law degree. That makes a lot of sense, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So would you say your dad was the number one influencer?
Sounds like it.
Yeah.
I guess he was, just in general. But as I said, he practiced law. He was more of a lawyer than a businessman. I was always more of a businessman than I was a lawyer.
Makes sense.
Okay. Yeah.
But he was the guy. He was the guy. And my family has always been in real estate in Baltimore. So that was my basic background was through the rental business in Baltimore City, buying and renting row houses downtown Baltimore.
So you graduate college, you graduate the degree in law. Why don't you take it from there?
Okay. So I worked at my father's firm for a few years. While I was working there, I was building a real estate portfolio, going to auctions, buying row houses in Baltimore City. Back then in the early 80s, row houses you could buy for about $10,000 a piece. $10,000, you could rent them for roughly $300 a month, which was a very nice return on your money. Financing was available through the savings and loans, and I just started building a portfolio. So that took me through the 80s. I also was involved in a title company doing real estate settlements. I was searching titles in the courthouse. I was learning all I could from what do you need to know information wise about real estate in Baltimore City. I wanted to know who owned what. I wanted to know how to find out the history of the houses, what kind of liens were against them, whatever I could find out, because I knew that was my target, that was my direction. And in the early '90s, I decided to go out on my own, much to my father's chagrin, because he thought I was going to stick around and basically take over his firm, but it wasn't in the cards for me. I wanted to be a business guy. I wanted to be an entrepreneur. So I went early '90s. I went and bought a mixed use building, Midtown Baltimore, and I basically started to focus at that point in the tax lien business in Baltimore City. You guys want me to explain
Yeah,
what?
I was just going to say for our viewers and listeners, why don't you just take 5 minutes and explain the tax lien business and how it works?
Okay. So when you own real estate anywhere in the country, you've got to pay taxes to the municipality that the property is located in. And if you don't pay your taxes, every municipality will conduct a tax sale auction where they will sell the lien, which is the tax amount, to investors who can then purchase those liens, those delinquent taxes, pay the money to that municipality, and now the investor now has the rights to collect those delinquent taxes plus interest, possibly plus legal costs. And if the owner of the property doesn't ultimately pay, then I, as the tax lien purchaser, can foreclose under the tax lien and actually take over the property. That business was made to order for me. It combined my business skills with my real estate skills with my legal skills. And
Yeah.
I could get paid for all three of those skills, because when you foreclose, you're able to charge a fee, which was the legal fee, because a lawyer has to do the foreclosure. You also can earn interest on your money, depending on what county you're in. And ultimately, so you're going to get either an interest return, a legal fee return, and if the property does not redeem and you take title, well, now you own the property for basically pennies on the dollar. So I thought that was a really good business for my skill set.
Yeah, sounds like it. So this was in the early '90s. You're
This
how old are you? In your 30s?
I actually was I had started it in the late '80s, but I really didn't get into it heavy until I went out on my own. And I actually was in that business for a total of about 20 years. I think I started in 1985, was real heavy into it during the '90s and early 2000s, and decided to get out of it in 2005. There were just some things going on with the legislature and some of the competition where it just didn't make any sense for me to stay in it.
So from a perspective of quantity of deals, how many tax liens certificates did you think you bought during that period of time, and how many foreclosures where you own the real estate do you think you took over?
I during that 20-year period, I probably purchased 7 to 10,000 liens, And during that period of time, I probably acquired 200 to 300 houses.
Wow.
So when I got out of the business in the mid 2000s, it was interesting. I also, I guess I forgot to mention, along the way, I also was continuing to buy uh, uh, rental property at auction. So this was in the late 90s through the mid 2000s. Between single family row houses and apartment complexes, I had a total of about 150 or 160 units.
Jay, how did you get the money to purchase the tax liens at such a young age? Did you borrow the money? How did that work?
Yeah, initially I borrowed the money from friends and family.
Okay.
That was when it was just when I didn't need that much, maybe 100,000, 150,000. I was able to get that from friends and family. In the mid 90s, when I got into it much heavier, I partnered up with another investor about my age who had a rich daddy, and his father was willing to finance us as we got bigger and bigger. So at one point, I believe we were borrowing anywhere between $3 and $5 million.
I think you can
From
find
his
that funny
father.
now at richdaddy.com. I could be wrong.
Richdaddy.com.
I think
Is that where
that's
they're looking?
yeah, that's probably the best place to find that now. Yeah, so that makes sense.
Yeah.
And Rich Daddy was not cheap. Rich Daddy, Rich Daddy, made sure that he got his piece of the action from us, and we were more than willing to give it to him because without his money, we had no chance.
Jay, I'm sure I want to know, and so do our listeners and viewers want to know, what was the cost of the money?
I think it was 15%.
Okay. That's a little lower than I was actually expecting you to say.
Yeah, it's not bad.
That's not bad.
Yeah, so you leveraged your contacts to gain some funding from this person and use that as leverage to build your business, essentially.
Yes.
That's great. And did you ever? So did you borrow from this person the entire time that you were in that business, or did you get to the point where you could self-fund?
I borrowed from him as long as I was still partners with his son, and I was partners with his son for about 5 years. So after that relationship ended with his son, then I had to find another source. And at this point, I had made enough contacts through the industry to be able to find a bank funding source out of Florida.
Much cheaper, right?
Much cheaper.
Yeah.
Probably, if I recall, was probably maybe 8 or 9%.
Nice.
And I continued to borrow from them for as long as I stayed in the business.
That's great.
Yeah, so utilization of leverage, right,
Yep,
Alex?
for sure.
We'll see, right, which we'll unravel here in a little bit. So for a period of time, you were accumulating assets, and while, just constantly reminding our viewers and listeners about the wealth creation formula, it's about variable A, which is the scalability of income and the acquisition of assets, and we do that through the use of leverage. And over time, it sounds like
he was the prototype for this, right?
He was.
He's the prototypical.
Yeah.
You got a skill, right,
Yeah.
in finance and law. You use that skill to produce income while simultaneously acquiring assets, and so that the formula is like
right.
Yeah.
So Jay, would you say we're going to cover this in a lot of different angles here, but what were you doing for income versus, I like to talk about real estate as an asset play. To me, real estate's an asset play until it becomes debt free and has the cash. But what was your primary income driver?
Sounds
all
like he
those
was charging
years?
legal fees, right, for this business. Yeah.
My income was a combination of legal fees from the tax sales, and I also had a title company. So I was
Okay,
earning fee income off of that.
got it.
Nice.
So along the way, you're buying tax liens, buying real estate as assets, as an asset acquisition strategy, and you were using your law degree and leveraging that in several ways.
Yeah, I never took money out of the real estate.
Right.
I wanted the whole idea owning the real estate, and if I had to borrow money to purchase the real estate, the goal was just pay down debt.
Right.
My whole mindset the entire time was pay down these loans. I very rarely had any money just lying around in a savings account, because if I'm paying 10 to 12% on my mortgages and I'm earning 5 or 6% on my cash in the bank, well, that's a loser.
For
So
sure.
let me just continue to pay down debt. And then when I got into the mid 2000s, and at this point I was in my mid 40s, uh, I think all the real estate that I had acquired and owned, I think had been paid off.
Wow.
And did you
Paid off.
say, was it a few hundred assets? Is that what you said?
150 units.
Yeah.
That was the rental.
The,
But what was very interesting, and this all took place in 2007, 2008. I had mentioned that I had my own rental real estate portfolio, and that I had also acquired a bunch of tax sale properties through the tax lien foreclosures. Uh, the majority of the tax sale foreclosure properties I sold, and the majority of those buyers didn't have cash, so I would finance them with a seller take back mortgage. And I was looking at my financials during a period of time, and I was noticing between my rental property income and my seller takeback income, they were about the same. The dollar amount about the same.
Right.
And I said to myself, now let me see here. I've got these rental properties with all of the tenant issues and all the repair issues and all the leasing issues, and I'm making the same amount of money as I am on my seller take back loans that don't have to do anything other than collect the monthly check. So at that point, it dawned on me that I no longer wanted to nor needed to be in the rental business. So over time, I took all my rental properties and I sold them. Some for cash, some I took back paper, whatever it was. That was the time I decided to exit the rental business and just be in the paper business.
Right. So you
And
became a
Ben,
lender. Yeah.
that I was not a hard money lender until probably 2009 or 2010.
Right.
But that's what led me into the business that you were in for all those years.
Yeah.
yeah, you realize the seller held mortgages produce the same amount of income. So you say, well, I want to loan money versus own the asset and rent it.
Without the aggravation.
Yeah, for sure. Makes sense.
Okay.
So he's now utilizing his time in a more effective way, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
And he's
makes
collecting
sense.
he's collecting interest payments as opposed to rent payments.
Mhm.
Right.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, so that's 2009. You made that transition, and I know the rest of the story. But for our listeners and viewers, why don't you go bring us all the way through to today?
So 2009, I decided I was going to become a hard money lender, and for approximately, I guess, 10 years or so. That's what I did. And I got my portfolio up fairly significant. And I think I started to wind that down when I moved out of Baltimore in 2018 or 2019.
Yeah.
And since then, I've just been investing in other people's businesses, your business, some other guys in the same business,
Right.
and just managing my investments. So I'm no longer on the front lines, beating my head against the wall.
Now, Jay, we have some extra time, so I'm gonna deviate just a little bit. You had accumulated a pretty sizable mortgage portfolio, but you pulled in some debt. You used some leverage, right? I know it was minimal, it wasn't a ton, but you did have a bank line that you utilized, right?
Yes, for the hard money
For the
business.
hard money piece. And
Correct.
since you went into kind of explaining the tax sale, I wasn't planning on doing this, but I think for the sake of the fact we have some time, leveraged finance, at the bank level, and also at the private credit level is something that, Alex and I do. We've both done at the bank level and at the private credit level, as so have you. But I think for our viewers and listeners, let's discuss that, and I would like you to explain, just like you did with the tax sales, how the mechanics of lending money worked with the utilization of some bank debt, and how you leverage that.
Okay. When I got into the hard money business, I did have my own portfolio of loans at that point, but I knew in order to grow, I needed additional leverage. I needed additional capital. So I called one of the local banks, told them who I was and what I was doing. Went in to see them and showed them my entire portfolio and asked them if they would lend or set up a line of credit. I could use my existing portfolio as the collateral for their loan to me. And I believe they had not done it before with anybody else, but they thought I was a very good candidate for that business model. So they said, sure, we'll do it. I think they started me off at maybe $2 or $3 million. And I think ultimately they let me run it up to, I think, 8 million.
Right.
And
What drove in your mind, what drove that decision to go out and seek that capital or that leverage?
I couldn't grow any other way. I needed capital infusion.
Got it.
And what were you borrowing at? What was the cost of money at that time?
I think at that time, this is again 2011, 2012. It was
4%.
probably 5 or 6%, maybe 7%, somewhere between 5 and 7%.
And what were you lending it out at?
And I was lending it out at anywhere from 12 to 16%,
Very nice.
Not bad.
and a couple of points.
So what is that, like a 10% spread? It's not terrible, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was a nice spread. It was a nice spread.
Right. So whether you want to call that arbitrage or leverage, it's the way of the world. So Jay took assets, leveraged those assets to borrow money at one cost and lent it out basically at double that.
Yeah, no different than owning a home that you own free and clear, taking a mortgage on it and using that mortgage to go buy another asset.
That's
Same,
right.
Same principle. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think, Jay, any more to talk about your career, your story before Alex and I kind of start unraveling the wealth creation formula and applying it to what you did, just to help our viewers and listeners just to understand this. We're constantly preaching the wealth creation formula and these variables, and how every wealthy person really has applied them. But any more to your story? What would you attribute your success to? And just what other advice? Just one last thing I like to say. You're 66. I've known you for 40 years. So I've watched your tremendous success. You can easily look back for the last however many years and tell people how you got there. I tell people that if you're 21 and you're trying to figure out how to get to wealth at 61, it's hard to look in the future and predict it and see the future. So anyway, I'll turn it over to you.
I remember distinctly when I was in my early 20s buying real estate. And back then, Ben, if you remember, the only financing you could get from the local banks, the local SNLs, was 10-year fixed.
Right.
Right? So there wasn't any cash flow at all. But as I started buying 24, 25, 26 years old, by the time I was 35, 36, 37 years old, I had 50 or so properties in Baltimore City paid for, free and clear. And that really gave me the launching pad to where I wanted to go.
Right.
And I'll never forget that I was amazed myself
Yeah, it's
when I was
impressive.
35 years old. So, obviously the sooner you start, the better.
Right.
The other thing was what I didn't want to do, and I saw a lot of guys overbuy, over leverage, over everything, and they couldn't handle it. They didn't have the infrastructure in place to handle all those properties. I knew what my limitations were. I knew how much I could absorb and do it well and do it efficiently, versus just buy, and then just throw together some kind of management team and do everything halfway. That's just not the way I wanted to do my business. So it was controlled growth, but it was steady growth, and it was always don't bite off more than you can chew. Every now and then I did. I think we all do when we're young. But just pay down debt, and don't touch your real estate. Figure out how to make money off of other ancillary businesses, maybe connected to your rental properties, but don't take anything out of your rental properties. You'll never get anywhere.
Yeah, you and I share that mantra. Rental properties are nothing more than seeds that are meant to go to maturity, and they shouldn't be chopped down early and drawn from.
Yeah, your backgrounds are super similar.
Yeah, they are
Yeah.
similar.
Yep.
So Jay, if nothing else, so what I think Alex and I would like to do is we've heard your story, and now we want to kind of unravel it for our listeners and viewers, how you executed, how you applied the wealth creation formula, which is 4 variables. And I haven't met a wealthy person yet who's challenged this notion of this wealth creation formula. The 4 variables made up of an income strategy, acquisition of assets, the use of leverage, and the proper use of time. So I guess let's, where do you want to start, Alex?
Yeah, I mean, I think I think Jay, your trajectory is spot on for this formula. Probably, I think it applies so directly in this case, not even indirectly, but you leveraged your time to gain a skill, right? Through your education, through your experience with your family's business and whatnot. You use that skill to develop a strategy in which you could earn income and create disposable income so that you could, throughout that, what's interesting is your income strategy was your asset accumulation strategy at the same time.
Yeah,
So
that's right.
I wish I had a strategy
Pretty
like that.
pretty efficient, right? When you're going after the use of time and you're solving both variables A and B at the exact same time.
Well, I'm kind of jealous about this, Ben. Are you?
Yeah.
I guess you're doing the same thing. But anyway, so
I should write a book.
maybe
I think you should.
write a book.
There
Exactly.
you go.
Wait a second. This guy is using the formula better than anybody.
Yeah.
So while you were using your skills to generate income, that generation of income was the specific thing that you needed to also acquire assets, right? And so you were generating income to support yourself, and at the same time using that same strategy to accumulate assets. And I don't know, and you were using leverage, right? Because you were using other people's money to do it, right? And over time, you leverage those assets and the income produced by those assets to pay down your debt, and at the end, become very, very wealthy. I mean,
That's right. That's right.
so efficient, right?
Yeah, I mean,
Impressive.
the key is learn a skill. Step
Correct.
one. Use that skill to produce income.
Right.
And if you're fortunate enough, as Jay was, to have your income strategy also to be your acquisition of asset strategy,
Right.
leverage other people's money in helping you acquire more assets, have the tenants pay down your debt,
Right.
voila, you've created high net worth.
That's exactly right. It's so sound. The fundamentals are all there. It's really amazing. Yeah. So kudos to you, Jay.
Not to interrupt, but when you are using other people's money, you make sure that they know how much you appreciate their trust and faith in you by lending you the money, and you make sure that you pay them on a very regular basis without any kind of issues, because you're trying to build credibility.
Right. Do you
With
feel like
all
we
these
owe Jay
different
some
lenders.
money? Is that what he's saying
Yeah,
right now?
I think
is he talking to us?
Jay's the largest. Yeah.
So what does he say we
See,
should
what
do?
is he trying to tell us?
Yeah, I feel like this is some.
Yeah, is this a
some
message
veiled
to Alex and
messages.
Ben?
Yeah.
You know, I never paid a late fee.
No, but your
creation.
point is valid, right? So when you have these sources, your point is when you have these sources of leverage, you want to treat those like gold, right?
Yeah,
Make sure that,
absolutely.
yeah, that's a really good
Yeah,
lesson
good.
because
lesson.
I think there are investors out there that just assume that they're entitled, right, to that money, and that they deserve it. And I think your point is that that's your ticket to success. So why not treat that exceptionally well, that relationship?
Can I throw in a little aside here?
Yeah,
Yes,
sure.
absolutely.
Okay, just for color, okay? When I was 16 years old, I wanted a car, okay? But I didn't have any money for a car. My father bought both of my brothers a used Volkswagen Beetle when each of them turned 18. That was his gift to them when they turned 18. I didn't want to wait till I was 18 to get my car. I wanted it at 16. I was working. I needed wheels. So I went to my father and I said, Dad, I need a car now. He goes, well, that's nice. He says, but you're going to have to wait 2 years like your brothers. I said, well, but I really want it now. How about if we do this? How about you buy the same car you would have bought them, but I'll pay you back for it. You don't have to give it to me. I'll pay you for it. I just don't have the money right now. So he thought about it. He says, all right, well, I'll try it. So we went and got a Volkswagen Beetle, just like my brother's, for $1,000. He bought it for me, and I paid him back within a year. And he was very impressed.
Wow.
Unfortunately, or fortunately,
Not a lot of sons pay their dads back in a year like that. Yeah, that's impressive.
so the car, unfortunately, after a year and a half, burnt up.
Okay.
And it was no good no more.
Right.
So when it burned up, I went back to him, almost in tears, and he said, Jay, since you did what you said you were going to do by paying me back, I'm going to go and get you a new car. He bought me a Ford Pinto, 1975, for
strong.
$3,000.
Right.
How much?
$3,000.
Wow.
And I earned that because I did what I said I was going to do, and I built credibility on the first go round.
For sure.
And that's what it's all about.
Exactly. It makes sense.
Yeah, good story.
Yeah, it's a great story. I think if you run the numbers on the number of kids that pay their parents back for something like that, it's probably a very low percentage.
I'm gonna play this podcast for my 4 children.
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
Let them feel guilty about.
But that's in line with, hey, when somebody gives you some support or some help, you really take care of that relationship and make sure you do what you say you're going to do. Make all your payments on time, and that relationship will continue. It's a valid point. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Well, Jay, any other parting words? We're coming up on top of the hour here. Your story, I've known your story, and you've worked hard for what you have, and it's quite impressive. And you play well into the wealth creation formula as anybody has. Any other kind of words for our viewers? It's really about advice. You've earned the right to give advice.
Well, it's the formula is so simple. It's just work hard, do what you say you're going to do, build credibility, stick with it, perseverance, and you'll get where you're planning on getting to. It really is that simple. And you're going to have lots of bumps in the road. I've had plenty. But you just endure it, deal with it, take your lumps, and keep going. Yeah. And you'll end up where you want to end up. So that's
do the right
pretty
things,
simple.
Slow and steady, persevere, overcome challenges, do what you say you're going to do. Ethics, it's great.
And nobody wants to hear an excuse. They don't care. Everybody's got challenges. Just deal with it and come out on the other side. Try and minimize your negative situations as quickly as you can, because when you get caught up in negativity, you miss all of the opportunities that are staring you right in the face because you're not seeing them, because you got this negative, this cloud over some bad deal you just did or got stuck in. Just get rid of it. It's okay to take losses in business. Okay, people do it all the time. Just minimize them, get them out of your system so that you can move forward with positive energy. And with that, gentlemen, those are my words of wisdom.